Welcome to Hooper's Delight Podcast, Episode 2 with Coach AJ, EBC, and Coach Key at Varsity Athletes. Here we are.
Let's do it, man. I've been looking forward to Episode 2 ever since dropping Episode 1 and having a chance to hang out and talk ball with you. Let's jump right into it, man. We talked about the Owyhee Holiday Tournament, maybe the biggest tournament Idaho...
Not maybe. The biggest tournament.
The biggest tournament Idaho has ever seen from a basketball standpoint, bringing in nationally ranked teams like Corona Centennial from LA, Salesian from the Bay Area, then you had Ironwood from Arizona, and then also Sheldon from Sacramento against four of the four probably top teams in Idaho: Pocatello, Hillcrest, Madison, and Owyhee. Idaho teams went 4-8 overall. Only one that had a winning record was Owyhee.
Yep.
We did get a chance to see Owyhee, number one Owyhee and number two Madison go at it on the final day. We'll touch on that. But overall, you were there for 2 of the 3 days. You headed out of town championship Saturday, so you missed that. I missed it as well. My kids had games. I caught the end of the championship game. But what an environment. I grew up in Portland. I go into the Les Schwab Invitational every year, one of the biggest tournaments in the country. I watched Tyson Chandler, Kevin Durant, Carmelo Anthony. You know, I can name drop all day on how many guys I got to watch growing up there and how that was my favorite time of year. Right. Feeling again out here, seeing what Owyhee is creating for the basketball culture out here is special. How did you feel things went?
As far as a tournament standpoint, it was by far the best group of talent in one place at one time, including the state tournament. Just from an overall athletic standpoint, for us to be able to witness guys like Carter Bryant, Eric Freeney, Noah Gift, and those guys at Salesian that were just, as a team, collectively, that Salesian team that won the whole thing, they didn't overwhelm you with size. They didn't overwhelm you with athleticism. But as far as team chemistry and guys hitting timely key shots during each of their games, because each of their games were close, they just performed better as a team and as a whole than any other team in the tournament. And they kind of, I think, woke up the Idaho teams to what it is truly like when you're that together. Because there was their point guard, Stud. He had double doubles with assists and rebounds, and really didn't look to score as much. And he ended up getting the MVP of the tournament.
I'm gonna give him a shout out. Tough name to say.
Yep.
Aaron Hunkin-Clater, who's Hawaii commit.
I didn't want to say the last name.
Seeing him have 10 assists, 12 rebounds, 5 points against Owyhee was maybe the most impressive performance I saw. And I heard in the championship game he did his thing as well. So, anyway, continue.
Well, he dictated the tempo of each game and his control of things. He's one of those guys that if you're looking at a box score, obviously you're going to see the assists and the rebounds, but you're going to wonder about the point category. And he contributed to almost all of their points, whether it was an assist or a hockey assist. And he was always in the right spots defensively, and he was never rattled. And so that, to me, is what stood out to me from the people that want to see, 30-point bombs and 40-point bombs like Eric Freeney had. The point guard from Salesian was just a little different. He didn't have to do that. And he got the right people the ball at the right time every single time, didn't have careless turnovers, and you could just tell that he really studies the game. And I think that's one of the topics I want to touch on with the kids out here, not only, the kids that were in the tournament, but for the kids that got to watch or got to be around or hear about it. There's an aspect of basketball that we've talked about before, a game within a game. And a lot of times how you learn how to play the game, it should be through watching it. And as a spectator at that tournament, I could see the difference from the kids that truly love the game and the guys that like it and what comes with it.
Yeah.
And from an effort standpoint, from an IQ standpoint, which is the biggest thing, and then just from a dog mentality, like the never quit, get on loose balls. That Salesian team was a bunch of dogs, diving on loose balls, helping each other up. When a teammate would fall, they would sprint to their teammate and all lift them up. There wasn't too much selfishness, to be honest, really at all. Because they had the shooting guard,
Alvin Loving, who has Yale interest. He was efficient. He was selfless when he needed to be.
And that was what stood out to me about him, is that he was a guy who would go and get you 10 right away. and then he would play make as well. And he passed the extra pass. There were sometimes he had an open shot, would do that, an extra pass. So, and those things stand out to me, just being a basketball junkie that I am and studying the game that I do, the amount of hours I put into learning it and growing up and playing it, is when you see a guy that can score and can fill it up, can shoot it, give up an open three to just one more right to the corner, to maybe to a less of a shooter, but a better shot, those are the things that stand out, and that's why a team like Salesian won. From an offensive standpoint, they moved the ball better than any team in the tournament, and then defensively, they were hounding guys. Full court press, a lot of pressure, getting 50-50 balls, diving on the court, getting gang rebounding, because overall height, I would say they probably had about 6'1" to 6'3" in that range, and to out-rebound teams, to out-physical teams, and the thing is, it was always the next man up. So that's what stood out to me about them. The other team that really kind of, caught my eye was Madison. Nash Humphreys, his ability to create shots for not only himself, but for his teammates, his leadership, he wasn't rattled, and there was a lot of focus on him. Barrett Wilson did a great job. That Madison team, and they travel well. And I think that's a big thing when it comes to high school basketball, is just being able to have people that support you behind you. Because when you're in a game in a hostile environment and you have students that are coming and traveling to uplift your team, I feel like that can push you above other teams that have nobody there, because when it's rough and you're in a slump and you're missing shots and everything feels like it's against you, oftentimes it is. And when you have a student section or you have a group of committed fans there uplifting you and cheering you on, it's easier to catch fire. And I think that we've seen that in the Madison Corona Centennial game with Nash Humphreys going off, I think, 11 straight in the end of the third quarter, just because he had the crowd with him. And
fed off.
I mean, we kind of were sitting there, and I was like, man, he's nasty. And like, I've seen Nash play for the last 2 years, and just seeing him develop, he has extended range, his finishing ability, his ball handling skills, just keeping the ball on the string and keeping it tight. He could definitely get 30 if he wanted to, but he was looking more to create, and then when it was his time, he knew it. And being able to know when you're in the moment is a huge thing. And I think that how he finished that third quarter was his time, and he capitalized on that. So that was a team that really stood out to me.
That brings me to a question that a lot of us in the basketball community who know the insides and outs of these players and these teams have had, and that is Nash Humphrey a Division I basketball player? Offensively, I think you just said it. He took that moment and showed against a future NBA lottery pick, I would assume, in Carter Bryant, against a UCLA guard and Freeney. Can he defend there? To be determined.
Right.
But after this past spring getting the MVP, or this past summer getting the MVP in that New Balance circuit, the 16U tournament now coming out, and I was telling people before the tournament, I really want Madison to take that first game, because I really want to see Nash Humphreys go up against big-time Division I guards to see where he fares, because I think it could be a big recruiting weekend for him. And I think it was. And I think it ultimately, he had a good game against Owyhee as well. It took him a while to get going, but against Carter Bryant, who ended up wanting to guard him, and put up a couple highlight reels on Carter Bryant and these guys. I think Nash, offensively, I think he's valid. I think you stamped that. Defensively, obviously, you've been talking to guys like Logan Hosvite and Jace Allen and these guys about, like, if you're an undersized guard and you want to play at that level, it's got to be 94 feet. I'm a dog you. I'm going to wear you out. I'm going to be in better shape. And a guy, Steve Nash, who I will always remember this, I was a big Steve Nash guy. He always said my biggest weapon was my conditioning. It got to the fourth quarter, and that's when I was breaking through my wall, and guys were flattening up against the wall. Like, guys like that, Hostvite, Humphreys, Allen, Gibson, these guys need to be at a different level when it comes to conditioning and being able to dog 94 feet if they really want to be winning.
And I think that's, for me, it's your ability to, it's a sacrifice. When you have to take that defensive responsibility, sometimes it takes away from your offense. And that, to me, is what's going to be difficult for Madison. And I became a huge fan of Madison over that weekend, because, they're just swagger. Like, they don't care who it is. They're going to put their shoes on and they're going to hoop. And that, to me, is a big a big focus point on how teams should really approach certain opponents is because you can't look at somebody because they have NBA talent or they have, like Freeney had 40 the game before, the UCLA commit. If you look at that and you go into the game scared, you're gonna get punched in the mouth, you're gonna get blown out. But if you go in and you start, throwing punches first and you show that you have no fear, then you have a game. And so that's what they did to me in that Corona Centennial game. Now, I think they probably ran out of a little juice because they fought hard. So that, that next game, obviously I didn't see it, and it was played, Owyhee at home. But I think when they meet again, which they will, I think it'll be a little bit different. It'll be a tighter contest. So, but for me, I think that Nash, from an offensive standpoint, is Division I. He has a Division I skill set from an offensive standpoint. His leadership, his ball handling. He doesn't turn the ball over. He can pass. I think that he could probably see more if his vision opens up just a little more. I think then he'll really have that that part of the game down. He can shoot it. He has a plethora of moves that he can use to score. His scoring ability is there. Yeah. Defensively, the hard part is this: when you're an undersized guard, you have to learn how to position yourself to not get beat. And also, when you lack size, these other guards that you see at the Division I level are typically 6'3" to 6'5", 6'6".
At the point guard position.
At the point guard position. Yeah. Not only that, they have the length in the arms. Their wingspan is typically around 6'9" to 6'11", and usually their verticals vary from 32 to about 42. So, which depends on each situation. Yeah. Division I level, the hard part is that some of these guards can't shoot it. The really good guards are going to be able to shoot. That's the biggest point of Division I, and what separates guys is the physicality, the body, and then your ability to shoot. Because nowadays, you could thank Steph Curry for this. His ability to shoot the ball has changed the game. Yeah. And so before, when I grew up, how the point guards would be is, can they play make? Are they athletic? We had more Russell Westbrook, John Morant, John Wall, Derrick Rose type guards that can't shoot it as well from the three, can shoot it a little bit, but you're most likely going to go under the ball screen just because you'd rather give them the shot than give them a lane to drive or be able to get downhill. Exactly. And so with Nash's ability to shoot, that puts him, I would say, in that position because he can shoot it so well and he has such extended range. And you could tell he's a coach's kid. Yeah. How he controls the game, his pace, how he composes himself, composes his team, dictates the tempo. Those are huge things. On the defensive end, when I talk about 94 feet, the type of conditioning that you have to be in, the type of condition you have to be in, and the conditioning that you have to do is not something that I feel like high school programs give to you. And that's no disrespect, no shot at the high school programs. But when you've been in a position like myself, I was a defender, and that's how I got my, how I was able to earn the opportunity to be an offensive threat and to be the guy, if you will. You have to guard at a level of, one, without fouling. And depending on how the refs are calling it, which out here was a little bit different, I think the teams from Oakland and Sacramento and Arizona and LA seeing that you're not able to play the game as physical as you would at home. Mm-hmm. Not only that, with how we call charges here, it is the most common called call here, at least from what I've seen. And a lot of times guys are late, but we're so used to just giving it to them. And a lot of times it's dangerous plays. Guys are already up, and we're letting them slide in and take the charge or flop. Yeah. Some of these guys, we've seen a couple charges that, dudes sold it, and you gave them the call. And to me, they just created a rule in the NBA where you get fined for flopping. Yeah. And so for me, it takes away from the game because some guys are just physically stronger and more dominant, and you're making that a disadvantage for them because of their size. And so for me, that's kind of, where we kind of lack. And because we don't have the charge circle, because we do teach a good job, dudes do take charges. Yeah. But how frequently it's called, I would just say it's not always right.
Well, it takes away from the physicality that maybe more my generation, your generation is used to. And that's why you always hear that argument. Right. Well, back in the day, it was much more physical. That's facts. More points are scored today. The game is played differently. Yep. And it's just, Idaho is more just kind of that, behind. Right?
We're behind. And that's the reality. And now how the game is played and is that the offensive player has all the advantages. The defensive player is at a disadvantage. From taking away hand checking to even how these guys screen. There's a ton of moving screens that are not called. Mm-hmm. And from the top down, from the NBA all the way down. Yeah. And Idaho is very quick to call a moving screen. And sometimes because the ball handler doesn't get even with the ball screen and tries to go right away, that's the point guard's fault, the guard's fault that's coming off the screen.
Yeah.
If that screener's not set, now the screener's got to sprint. There's not very many guys that sprint to set screens anymore. So when you look at comparison of eras or how the game has changed, back in the day, everything was technical. You sprint to screen, you waited, then you came off the screen at a good speed, you rolled, you popped, you yelled out your cut of what you were doing, and that's how the game was played. Now it's not like that as much.
Yeah.
You got guys walking up into the screen, taking some time off, the game is supposed to be faster, but it gets slowed down by some of the pace and some of the tempo of how these guys approach the screen.
Yeah.
And then the screeners typically don't roll hard or don't pop hard, and now you're just waiting for a guard to now create a shot. And if he gets doubled, then he gives it to the roll man or the pop man.
Yeah.
So, but
different.
It's just a little bit different how the game is played. But going back to the defensive end, when it comes to 94 feet, when you have to pick up right after a made basket, you got to pick up. You have to literally exert every ounce of energy to get up to your man without fouling and pressure him to at least create him to take 7 to 8 seconds off the shot clock as he brings the ball up the floor. When you have to do that every single time consistently and then lead and take the scoring load upon your shoulders, it's a lot for a player to handle. So, and I'm not saying that they can't do it. They should be able to do it. But that comes with your preseason training and with so much going on from you have club that starts right as soon as the season ends. So you got spring, summer, fall club.
So it's got to be
so it's
365
year round. Training. If you're, and no disrespect to any trainers, but if your trainer is not preparing you for, if you have one, is not preparing you for these types of situations, it's a disservice. Because there's a million guys that want to do 100 moves dribbling the ball. There's not many guys that really want to play the right way. And so that has to be incorporated within, whether it's running and conditioning, shooting, or your ball handling has to be hard and you're running full speed, defensive drills. As much as it's boring, we are, as a trainer, I'm an extended practice sometimes of what my guys are doing and what their programs are doing, because they only can do so much.
Yeah.
And since they have the Rule 2 here, you're at a disadvantage for a coach to actually sit there and train or coach their team. And so that's where guys like me and these other trainers out here come in to try to help push these players further. And if you have the experience, which I can't say everybody has, but if you have the experience and you've played at these levels and experienced different coaches, you know how this thing goes. You can then relay the message to these players a little bit differently so they can see it and they know that you've been through it. So when it comes to conditioning, a lot of players and programs out here are saying, well, these guys are doing so much. They're not. And that's the reality of it. You have an hour and a half, 2-hour practice, max.
And it's team-centered. Like, let's get that straight, right? A lot of people out there are like, oh, yeah, I'm putting in work. I'm going to practice like 2 hours a day. That's team-centered.
Right.
You're not doing some coaches do individual skill development, which is great. But you've got to put sets in. You've got to get it. You've got guys that have a tougher time learning things. You need to, as a coach, you need to adapt to everybody's personality and the way they learn, whether it be visual or intellectually or whatever.
Right.
But that's why I tell people, players improve the most away from the high school season.
Yep.
Because that's when it's
depending
on
on program. Depending on
program. But let's say the majority then.
Right.
Let's say the majority, like you're saying. Some people have experience and understanding. Most don't. And that's not a knock on anybody. It's just a fact. Most people don't understand. There's not a lot of people that truly understand the ins and outs of the game. Hence the reason we're sitting here doing this right now.
Right.
And we're going to help people understand. Some people don't want to hear it. That's fine. Do you. We're here to help. But I think most people think that they're putting in the work needed during the season. No, you need an extra hour to 2 hours. Individual work, focused on you, focused on your conditioning, focused on your strap, all those different things. Correct?
Well, while you're fatigued, when you do these things, and so I want to give a shout out to one of my pro guys, Jeremy Burright. He's played in Sweden and played all over the place. There was one day we're working out this summer and he didn't shoot the ball particularly well. And when we played, I had him play with some of my college guys and high school guys, and he felt that he didn't give enough effort within that, maybe because of who he was working out with and training with. But what he did after we finished is he started doing defensive slide drills. And he told me, he's like, I had to do more work. I had to do more stuff. And this is a pro, getting paid to play the game. And so if he's doing that, and I looked at my high school guys that are sitting there, and I'm like, you got a pro right here that feels like he didn't give enough, and now he's doing defensive slide drills. Why are we still sitting there on our phones? You know? So it comes with a lot. And so when I look at these guys, and you know, I do think that that Nash has the ability to play Division I. I think that as he gets older, with the schemes and stuff that they show in college, he'll be able to defend. Got to get a little bit more size on the upper body. When you're shorter like that, you want to be kind of stocky. And have that Davion Mitchell that played at Baylor and now plays for the Kings, that approach.
Well, his dad looks like Davion Mitchell, so it's probably going to be
And so
there.
it's coming, but those are the things that I think that will put him where he's like, when you look at him, it's like, oh, that's Division I, instead of like, oh, are we on the fence?
Yeah,
So
100%
those
agree.
things come into play.
No, I think it was a great tournament, like you said. Excited to see what they continue to do and how it grows.
Right.
I do have a problem. I have a problem with not seeing a lot of other hoopers out there watching the tournament, whether it was because it was at Owyhee or people had games or whatever the excuses may be or facts may be. I didn't see a lot of guys from a lot of other schools, guys who I hear, I want to be D1, I want to be this, I want to be that. Dude, like you just said, you want to see what it's about. You want to see what that life is about. It's coming to your backyard. You're not going to come out and you're not going to watch Carter Bryant, a future NBA. Dude, I mean, in Portland growing up, it was an event. We were filling the old Memorial Coliseum to watch these guys play because they were going to do it at a high school. Then they had to do it at the Blazers spot because it was so popping. Out here, I know it was the first year, and I liked the turnout, whatever. I did not see a lot of hoopers because if I would have, I'd have had a lot more conversations. Me and you were sitting at half court on the floor. And we talked to all the hoopers that walked by. I didn't see a ton of guys from different places. Something I've been thinking about is like, why didn't we see more hoopers out there just taking it in, just watching? Not 100% sure why, but just to touch on your point that you made, how I learn a game is I sat back and I watched Jason Williams do his thing. I watched Steve Nash do his thing, and I would go straight out to my garage and I try the elbow pass. Try the elbow pass, right? Or okay, I'm gonna look here off the wall. Look here off. I mean, that's how I learned the game, right? And I obviously who you surround yourself with, the right trainers, the right coaches as well. But man, I remember how much that motivated me, how much that got me excited, how many things I took from other players that I watched, like in person and whatnot. So when it comes again, I recommend people get out and support and show. And I know it's Owyhee, and a lot of people got problems with Owyhee. We'll talk about that later. But great tournament, great kickoff. It's going to continue to grow. So get used to it. I'm looking forward to the next one.
Well, we had more players than, I mean, we spoke about a couple of them, but even like Owyhee's team, Pocatello with Bowie and Kessler Vaughn, right?
Yeah, Kessler Vaughn, he was hooping.
Those two guys, Hillcrest with Ike Davis, Larson, those guys, Hempworth, who I think
Taylor.
Hempworth really showed what he can do. He caught my eye.
He's tough.
And so a lot of those guys, and hopefully I'm not forgetting anybody, and if I am, shout out to all my Idaho people. I was Team Idaho, so that was what I wanted to see. But looking at these guys and even these other teams like Ironwood had Noah Gift, I want to say his name
was a guy.
Where he was a dude who, they started off the first game they played Owyhee and they got smacked. And after that, the way that he came out and played after that game, like he made a name for himself through how he played. Their point guard as well that was at Ironwood was, if you watched him play, he could play. And you knew he was good. He was smaller, but he was everywhere. Yeah. And so, they had guys. I didn't see Sheldon. I was sad I didn't get to see Sheldon play at all. But I seen Julian, and I talked to him. He did well, and just pure shooter.
He showed against Corona and against these guys that he has the ability to absolutely be successful.
Well, and Pocatello as a whole, and that's one thing I can tell you about Pocatello kids. Tough kids, and they will fight. And so just seeing those guys perform the way that they did, it shows that they could compete with anybody. I think that Hillcrest kind of had a down weekend, honestly, and a lot of it had to do with not with their personnel is great. It's the effort.
Yeah.
And I think that, if you're thinking I'm taking a shot at you, then take it the way that you should.
Well, that togetherness was not present. And honestly, and I said this at the start of the year, and my Hillcrest guys and I got a bunch of relationships there, a bunch of friends over there. I'm going to say it again. I got Pocatello winning it, and I think the loss of Kobe Kessler from a keeping things together leadership standpoint, and even defensively and offensively, how good he was, I think is going to come into play when that state championship game rolls around. And it's in Pocatello. I think that will will be missing, and I think
Right.
Pokey will get one. I think we will get one, and that's how I feel right now. But
Right.
and seeing them go 0-3, I don't think they should have lost Ironwood. I don't think Ironwood was a team. I thought.
Well, and they should have beat.
Gift went
They
off,
should have
though.
beat Salesian from the first game.
I know.
You know,
They
so
had 'em.
and it's an effort thing for me. Is when I look at guys that are highly talented and the expectation is for them to dominate. I think that how you dominate a game, it's not always by scoring. You can rebound, your defensive presence, and just the swagger. You can't walk into games no matter what you've done in the past and think that you're here and that that's enough. Just showing up is not enough.
Yeah.
And so for them, I was a little bit disappointed in the performance. I was excited to watch them, play. I changed my work schedule just to see them play.
Yeah.
And I know that if those guys give effort, and that's one thing a coach should never have to coach, is effort. If those guys would have gave everything that they had every second they were on that floor, they would have been in a different position.
They could have won the
the
tournament.
They could have.
They're that,
And
their
that's how much
personnel
talent
is
they have.
Yes,
And so,
yes.
and one thing I can say, I know that my guy Ike was sick, but him to compete through it, I will say that he gave maximum effort.
Yeah.
But there's a leadership standpoint that comes with a team that is not gelling, and you have to be in that moment and vocally lead those guys. Don't just be a lead by example guy, which is okay, but there's a vocal leadership point and aspect of the game, especially from the point guard, where you have to get guys to bond together. You have to get guys to come together, and if you cannot do that, you're just a part of the problem.
Yeah.
And so when it comes to these next levels, and remember, when you go to college, you're going back to being a freshman. So for all my seniors that are going to go to play college next year, you're going back to being a freshman. So the same way that you look at the freshman now is how you're going to be looked at. Yeah. And a lot of guys, right, you're getting recruited to replace somebody. As soon as you commit and as soon as you sign, they are recruiting to replace you. Don't think that you're irreplaceable because you are. Yeah, and so,
facts.
and especially when these guys' jobs are on the line. So you have to be able to give forth the effort every time, no matter how you feel, no matter what you got going on in your personal life. They don't care about excuses, and we all have them. And so that's how different the college game is from high school. You can get away with stuff in high school, and college is not going to fly. They'll send you home.
It's going to be interesting to see how some of these guys, Liam, Isaac, Julian, how they adapt, right? Blake Buchanan's going through it right now. I talk to Blake regularly. He's gone through a little bit of the homesickness.
Yep.
He's had up games, down games, growing pains.
Right.
Like he's a freshman now.
Right.
Like Gatorade Player of the Year to a freshman.
Yep.
And there's growing pains. There's things and how mentally tough are you? How mature are you? Because you better get there. Because these places, BYU, SC, Boise State, they don't play.
Right.
They're not, you just said they will replace you, especially with the transfer portal. They'll replace you right now by
with somebody that's grown.
Yeah,
and it's
exactly.
proven. Majority of those guys are proven, and that for me is why the tournament, when people, like you said, people weren't sure, like certain players from around the valley that maybe tuned in from online or whatever, but didn't show up, and even the coaches out here that if you have something against Owyhee, whatever. But when it comes to that level, to show, like if I was in a team that wasn't in that tournament and say that I was struggling already in this season, I would have took my players to that, see a team like Corona Centennial, to see a team like Salesian, where we could sit there and say, hey, these are kids our age. These are kids in the same position, in the same boat that we are in. The only difference is these kids are not willing to quit. They're not going to quit for nothing. They don't want anything handed to them. They want to earn everything. You look at Corona Centennial with Eric Freeney, Carter Bryant, and
Isaiah Rogers.
Shout out.
Got a Utah State offer from how he performed.
Yep.
Would love to see him in case. Why not play together? But he's going to get more offers.
And look at that team, and he's a sophomore, right?
Yeah.
Sophomore. So you got a sophomore like that comes in fearless, and he's playing with two guys that are already high major. Division I commits, and Carter Bryant could potentially be a leaguer, and maybe Eric Freeney too as well, who gave 40 in the first game. You see that level of talent and realize those guys are just like you. They put on their shorts, their shoes the same way you do. You can go and you can learn something from those teams, and just the level of basketball that was being played.
100%.
The amount of mistakes over the course of that weekend that you couldn't make. That here teams make, and they're like, oh, we'll get the possession back. You didn't get extra possessions there. If you lost a possession there, it was a big thing. It wasn't like, because you could go from 2 to 20 quick.
We watched Meridian last night play Owyhee, and Meridian was the better team for 3 quarters, and then they went 3-4 minutes cold to start the fourth, and Owyhee wins by 21.
Right.
Because Owyhee is like those teams that you're
Right.
just talking about.
Right.
It's their tournament. They bring in these teams that they've played on ESPN and played in
Right.
Border League and all that. So Owyhee is like, they're introducing that.
Right.
So they need credit. There needs to be credit
Right.
there. They're introducing that to the state, and that's why you said all these other coaches and players. I said the players. You're calling out coaches. Like, people need to show up and grab on to the fact that basketball out here is not what basketball is.
Right.
It is different.
Yeah.
Okay, it is different, and for different to come and start, it's like putting like some seasoning in like a soup or something. It's gonna
Right.
taste different. It's different.
Right.
Like that's what's happening out here, and it's great for us. So for coaches and players not to show up and appreciate it because either it's out of Owyhee or whatever reason, or because you are on your phone or
Right.
had date night or need to take your dog for a walk.
Right.
Like, if you a hooper,
Should have been there.
you should have been there.
Well, and the reality
You should
too
have been
is when it came to that tournament, there was 2 divisions, right? There was the large varsity and there was the small varsity, and the small varsity had some of the top teams from out here, from Oregon, and what I can say from the top division with the large varsity, when you look at that, there's no hiding. Because there's these other tournaments. I'm happy that these guys are getting to go to tournaments now and travel outside the state. Centennial's right now, I think in Vegas playing in the Tarkanian Classic. I think that Mountain View's going to play in a tournament, and I'm pretty sure that Meridian's going to go do something as well.
Yeah.
And Eagle went and played in Utah and won, I think, the Utah tournament. But when it comes to top divisions, there's still levels, you know, and there's in these brackets, they're not bronze, silver, gold, you know, platinum, but like, this was literally large varsity, small varsity. The only reason why the small varsity teams wasn't in the large varsity is because of how big these schools were and the level of talent there. So when you go and you win, say that you go and you win a bronze tournament, that's not the same as competing in this large varsity one pool tournament. And so I think that perspective from people that don't know, you look and say, we went to Vegas, we won a Vegas tournament, but if you're in the 18th bracket, you're winning against lower competition and you get validation from it because of the name behind it, but not really knowing what you're getting.
But that's our problem out here.
And that's our issue.
And that's our problem with some of the, I don't want to say the problem with some of the clubs because they're just promoting what they're doing.
Right.
But there's no reason to act like winning the 18th division bronze bracket is a big deal. It's
Right.
not. Okay.
Right.
Winning the Damien, winning
It's
the
huge.
Owyhee Holiday Tournament.
Right.
Those are big deals. Going and playing in the top tier brackets in Vegas against these type of guys and winning it, or even being successful. The select group a couple years ago with Austin Bolton, Tanner Hayhurst, and a bunch of those guys, they went to Vegas and they won Vegas.
Right.
That was top tier.
Right.
That's something we should be talking about. I think there's a lot. It comes back to what I said earlier. A lot of people have no clue. There might be a 1%, bro, out here
Right.
that has a clue. That like, there's everybody that knows basketball, parents, players, even most coaches, right? Everyone knows basketball, whatever. And then there's this private room where the 1% can sit down and talk about it.
Right.
And it's completely different conversation, completely different understanding. And not a lot of you guys are in that room. And it's
by choice though.
And-
It's
no,
not.
for
It's
sure.
not because
For sure.
it's not an invitational thing. It's actually looking at things for what they are instead of perceiving yourself or perceiving something as this and it's not that.
I agree.
And it's even when it comes to talent. You look at Carter Bryant. You could tell when he walked in the gym, everybody was eyes on him.
Yeah.
And he had a goaltending play in the tournament where everybody was like, whoa. And you could see that next level of athleticism. And so when you look at a guy like that and you have these, I don't know if it's parents, coaches, whatever, saying, hey, my kid is this level, that's totally different.
Yeah.
Because a guy like that didn't have to say a word, he just showed it.
Yeah.
And that's what we as a whole and as the state, when you look at Owyhee, like, okay, everybody wants to talk about Owyhee, whether it's good, bad, whatever. I'm not, like, they're just changing what's going on. And it's not that these other teams, these other programs can't. It's that instead of sitting there and being like, oh, okay, they're doing this, however they're doing it, whether you think they're doing a million things wrong or whatever, worry about your program and what you can do to uplift your program and make it get to a new height. Every year that Owyee's been a school, they've done something to better themselves. Meridian, for example, with Coach Sainer, every year he over-accomplishes everything.
Yeah.
You look at it on a paper standpoint, and some people are like, oh, I mean, he always has a team. At the beginning of the year, you'll look and be like, they've lost a couple. When it comes to state time, you know what he's bringing.
You don't want to play him.
And nobody wants to play him. A lot of people don't give him credit. And he's not a guy that's out there. He doesn't want credit. He doesn't care about that. But he has done why he's doing it now. But what he's done with his program, the amount of guys that go and play college for him, without the same limelight, he's doing it. It doesn't get talked about. He does it. He's been doing it. And and when if you went to the game yesterday or last night and seen how he coaches, he always has an answer. And the thing is, that's a coach.
Yeah.
It's not a player. That's how much he impacts the game. And there's kids that fear him, that are playing in the game that fear him.
Yeah.
Not just the team.
Yeah.
Him. And so that's somebody that, sits there and they know the game, they play the game, they have the experience in the game, and they're not lazy. My thing about why I'm so critical on programs is we all have the same 24 hours. What are you doing within that hour? You know what you signed up for. So as a trainer, I signed up for this. So when a 5 a.m. workout comes, I don't complain about it. I go and do it because that's what I signed up for. I put myself into that.
You locked in, ready to go.
Right.
Because if you're passionate about it, if it means something to you, if it doesn't, if your parents are making you do it, which a lot of these kids are,
right.
I mean, let's be 100 folks. A lot of these kids, parents want them to do it. They're doing it because their friends are doing it. And that's when you hear complaining. And that's when you have people skipping workouts and whatnot.
Right.
Ultimately, the tournament was a big success.
Yes.
Tons we could talk about. We had multiple things we're going to talk about today. The tournament is going to be what we talked about today.
Right.
I want to give Avery Howell a shout out. I wore her jersey today. We're going to be talking about some girls basketball next episode, so tune in for that.
One thing too, I haven't seen Avery Howell play yet other than online. I'm going to go and make sure that I tune in because this is her last year here.
I'm taking it.
But this girl here, and I see the work that she does. I'll say this. I see part of the work she does. There's probably a ton that I don't see. And I've actually personally reached out to her to tell her that I'm going to come watch her play, because when you sit there and you see somebody that had all the offers, ended up, deciding to go to USC, and she's still in the gym consistently on break, does not matter what it is. She's there in the morning, she's there after the game, she's putting in the work. Those are people that I want to go watch, because I know that when they step on the floor, I know what I'm going to get, because the work that they've done will show me. And so shout out to Avery Howell.
Yes.
I will be at a game. I will see you. That's a shout out for you. And thank you for putting in the work that you've put in, and also shouting out your teammates, showing the support, not only for Boise High School, but her Meta girls, and just the level of which you've pushed Idaho in the Valley to get to, because everybody fears that Boise girls team.
Yeah.
And she's a big part of it.
Yeah, and I bring that up because we were sitting here talking about the commitment, the desire, the want, the love for it. Avery Howell has changed the game in Idaho from a girls' basketball standpoint, just like Destiny Slocum did.
Yeah.
Nia
Shout out,
Ajoku,
sis. Shout out to Destiny.
Nia Ajoku did in her own way. Avery Howell is the next in line, and there's 14, 15 commits in this year's class, D1, NAIA, high-level Division III, and then you've got Shay Shippen, Emmy Swilly, you've got Ajoku, Jada Ajoku, 3 other girls, lower classifications that are D1 offers as well. So excited to talk about girls basketball. Great tournament. Thanks for tuning into episode 2. We could go on so much more, much we could talk about, but always a pleasure, my guy.
Yes, sir.
I know you got places to be, people to see.
All right,
Love
brother.
you, boy.
Yes.
All right, guys.
Peace.